Bom dia, boa tarde, boa noite, or whatever the case may be. My name is Marcus, and I am the host of the Black Brazil Today YouTube channel, as well as the blackbraziltoday.com blog, where I analyze Brazil from the perspective of race. So today I wanted to react to a video and a channel that I just discovered maybe about a week ago. And I thought it was really important what this young lady had to say, so I definitely wanted to feature it on my channel. Before I even discuss this video today, make sure you like this video, share this video, subscribe to the channel, and click on the notification bell. With that said, what does this lady say? What does this young woman say that I had to react to? Let me get directly into the reaction for today. Okay, I wanted to talk about today's video because in my, let's say, ongoing political consciousness, my foray into the situation of the Black population, obviously first in the US, then more on a diaspora level, but then specifically on Brazil as well. You go through different levels of understanding of what it is that we're going through and how we're addressing the issues that specifically affect, Black people, whatever country that they're in. And what I came to discover years ago, and I can't put an exact year on it. You first become aware of the history of like civil rights movements and Black power and Black liberation, these types of things. And that's what you believe in. But for me, it was a certain point, maybe, I don't know, 20 some years ago, where I came to discover like, wow, okay, you have this mass level type of movement that seems to be well funded, and then you have more of the grassroots types of movements. So I'm like, what's going on here? Because you have one side that's advocating certain ideals and slogans or whatever, and they seem to be everywhere, on the television, in the schools. Then you have more of the grassroots where you don't know as much about them, but it seems like they know a lot better what's going on with the community than the people, on the high horse, we'll say. Where I'm going with that is when you have mass movements where you see tens of thousands, millions of people involved in it, it takes a lot of funding to do that. So what I've come to understand over the years is that when you have mass movements like that everybody gets involved, everybody knows what it's all about and who leads it, that takes a lot of funding. So when there are mass movements, you have to understand, and we have to ask the question, like, where does this funding come from? And increasingly like I said, over the last, I want to say since about 2013, I started seeing what I'll just call the hidden hand behind particularly leftist movements, whether we're talking about, Black rights movements, whether we're talking about LGBT plus movements, whether we're talking about feminism. I look at a lot of these movements and I'll see the same hidden hand behind these movements. And what I'm seeing is that I tend to see it as when something is mass funded and there's millions, if not billions of dollars going into a certain movement or a certain, how can we say, ideology, I tend to look at that and say that must not necessarily be good for the people as a whole. Because I tend to look at some of these movements kind of like with a hint of what's going on here, distrust, deception, social engineering, these types of things. So what I've discovered after I became aware of what's going on in the United States and me having followed the situation in Brazil, I began some years ago to see what's going on in Brazil in a similar lens. Because after you've seen what's going on in the United States for X amount of years and you see some of the same patterns and movements going on in Brazil, you say this is all connected. Because these movements that seem to spring up out of nowhere, they're funded oftentimes by the same sources. I've talked about this in a few other videos. I always say it's not for me to make somebody understand something or to see something that I see. Oftentimes people will never see it. And if, sometimes the few people who will see it, once you see it, you can't forget that you ever saw it. I hope you understand what I'm saying about that. It's not for everybody to get to get what the real message is here. The masses of people will always be deceived. It's only going to be maybe 5 or 10% of the people who are going to really get it. Like, oh, wow. we've been deceived. So where am I going with this is the modern, what we call movimento negro in Brazil. It's somewhat similar to what came out of the civil rights Black Power movement in the United States. Okay. So then what I'm seeing, particularly in the last decade, is that there's been a lot of money thrown into Black empowerment in Brazil, specifically, through the feminist lens, and what I've said before is that all of the leftist movements seem to be linked together. The Black movement, LGBT movement, and the feminist movement, they all seem to be together on the left. And I've always said I see that as a mistake because these three groups, even though there can be some intersection there, they do have their own specific agendas. So why are all of these groups together? I've got my own theories about that, which I'm not going to just flesh out today because I really want to talk about what this young lady had to say, because there's other groups that's popping up now who seem to see the deception that's going on, and they want to get back to a grassroots types of movements. So what I've seen for a number of years, particularly coming out of feminist circles, is like this type of denigration of men. And I've always understood that for a society to thrive and for a family to be unified and together and powerful, you can't put one over the other. So then we're getting a lot of this type of, we don't need men, this type of, what is a man worth? And we've seen it everywhere. And I've seen, little, pieces of this over in Brazil as well. So I'm just always, whenever I see this, I'm like, oh, wow, it's popping off in Brazil too. So it's like, whenever I see something jump off in the US, I know in a little while it's going to reach Brazil. And then it's like, okay, this is global. This is not something that you can just, this is just happening in one country or another, because no, the money sources and the influence comes from global sources. They look at this thing in a globalist mentality. Okay. So then when I find groups who seem to look beyond that and they can see the hustle that's going on, they want to get back to African values or traditional values that strengthen the family and thus strengthen the movements. I want to highlight some of that stuff because I'm seeing the same thing that's going on in Brazil. There's a lot of, I don't know if I've known this for a number of years, but I've had to, keep it to myself, because for the masses, people don't believe a whole lot of stuff when it comes across as conspiracy. Now, say when I share things with people and it sounds too conspiratorial, they're going to look at it, oh, that's crazy. I don't believe you believe that. Says, okay, I pass the information on to you. It's up to you to take this information and do a dig, do some research on it, or just dismiss it as conspiracy theory if that's what you want to do. But there's been times when I've said things to people and they come back to me like, Mark, you said this to me years ago and I didn't believe it, but I'm starting to see what you were talking about. Anyway, let me get back into what I wanted to feature today, because that's a whole nother thing. I just wanted to highlight what this young lady had to say, because the group Instagram page that I saw her video posted on, when I started looking into what they're into, I'm like, okay, within the movement for the consciousness raising of Brazil's Black population, you have smaller pockets that are more, I can say, have a deeper level of consciousness about what's really going on in the world. So they don't necessarily become a part of the mainstream movement, because the mainstream movement is often engineered from outside of the movement itself. I've seen this too many times to deny it or not talk about it. That's something that you have to find out for yourselves. Maybe I'll talk about it more in a video. But for now, I want to get into what this young lady was talking about. What she said in this short video speaks to the ongoing gender war. Again, what I've seen in the United States and Brazil as well, the rise of feminism in the modern woman. Now, people will take that and be like, why are you, talking down on women? And that's obviously that's not that's not what I'm trying to do here. I'm just trying to alert people that, we have been deceived by the billions of people. We've all been deceived. And a lot of these movements that are put in place are there for a reason, and it's not necessarily for our benefit. When you look at certain movements, like the one that starts with a C, the idea is the destruction of the family nucleus. Now, I don't know about you, but I don't think that's a good idea for society. So then when you create an ongoing war between men and women, in the end, that's what's going to happen. We see in the United States as well as Brazil, a lot of single mother households where kids are being raised without the father in the home. Is that really a good thing? That's something that we all have to ask ourselves. So I talked also about investments in these mass movements. From what I've seen in society that we live in, when there's a lot of money put in something, it's not necessarily good for the people. That's something you're going to have to figure out on your own. For now, I want to talk about what this young lady had to say, because I'm like, wow, I like what she had to say. So I just wanted to do a review on her video. The IG page that I found her video on was the Conceito Preto, which means Black Concept Instagram page. Today's video: we must appreciate our men. While society teaches us the importance of wives and mothers, little is said about husbands and fathers. So Conceito Preto introduced her video this way: the male presence has its unique and irreplaceable value, and little is said about it these days. Both masculinity and correct femininity have been corrupted by colonization, but we can't let ourselves be carried away by ideologies that deny or diminish either of them because of the colonized upbringing we've had. The mistake is not in masculinity or femininity, but in the way the colonizers taught us that we should practice them. If we turn our gaze to pre-colonial Africa, we will see that masculine and feminine roles are equally important, but differently practiced. They are not rivals or competitors, but complementary. I have to agree with everything they said there. So what I'm going to do right now, the young lady who did this video that's featured on Conceito Preto, she calls herself Let Hotep. So let me just, I'm going to just review her video. I'm going to overdub her video first, and then I'll come back and talk about it and put it more into context. I got emotional watching this video here and thinking about how many things it means. Check it out. Do you know what it reminded me of? That one day my father said this to me: I'm in the caboose and you're in the front. I'm very relaxed in the back, but if you need me, just call me and I'll get there quickly. And that's exactly what the video shows, how our fathers are back there quietly but always present, and at any call for help, they come with all the strength, courage, and willingness in the world to help. So much so that they even commented on it here. Anyway, this video isn't about me or my father, but in general, we need to value our men more. Because there's a lot of talk about how important mothers and wives are, and I totally agree. But there's little talk about our men and fathers, who are often portrayed as heroes. Because there is, in fact, a very similar behavior in those who take on their fatherhood with love and responsibility. Anyone who is the daughter of a good father should be able to identify with what I'm about to say. The feeling of security and protection that a father gives you makes you much stronger, much more courageous and self-assured person. Because you know deep down that you're being protected and cared for. It's probably not for nothing that the woman in the video won the competition. The strength that a father gives you echoes in your personality, and we need to recognize and talk about it more. Nowadays, many women, and I'm talking about cis heterosexual women, because that's my group, and where I have more ownership. Well, these women are adhering to the feminist discourse and claim to be empowered, which means emulating Wonder Woman and denying the need for men in their lives. Whether it's in a parentage relationship or a love relationship. In the love field, it's not the norm for a woman to have a relationship with a man. But when she wants to, she needs to connect with him and not act as if she doesn't need him. Just as a straight cis man also needs his woman. The roles complement each other, and this is part of building community. But anyway, still about us women. Many even choose to move away when they have the opportunity to have a cool partner. And here, I'm not talking about those who are going it alone because they haven't found anyone yet, but they know that would be ideal. I'm talking about those who shout to the four winds that they are all they need. I imagine that this is born out of a lot of past frustrations because they didn't have the proper love and protection from their parents or former partners. So they feel that they themselves need to be the man in their life. They feel that they need to brutalize themselves in order to provide the protection and security that others couldn't offer them. And that makes perfect sense, but it just doesn't work. Because behind that "I don't need a man" speech, there's a femininity screaming to be loved and to be able to finally relax, to let her guard down. And that's fine. That's right. And it makes perfect sense because that's our nature talking. And I know that we won't always be able to be in that place because our culture doesn't help us to have worthy and responsible men. But the long-term solution is to change the culture so that we can change our men. And also to change ourselves so that we are really open and available to those who are willing. Going against our nature, besides not solving anything, will only generate more problems. Hardened women and increasingly lax men. Well, that's why I'm recording this video. We need to recognize the importance of male presence and know that it's irreplaceable. Only then will we not try to replace it, but give the necessary space to the men who can take on this role. And there are many. As well as doing our part by raising our boys to be good fathers and husbands, and that creates a cycle of a better society, right? Peace. So anyway, you heard what the young lady had to say. I appreciated this video. That's why I wanted to highlight this, because I think her, and I'm thinking she's associated with Conceito Preto, the Black Concept page as well. I'm assuming that they have an affiliation there. There's a lot of messages there that the society as a whole really needs to listen to, because as I said, it's crazy because we look at Black women, we look at Black men, and we see this war going on and both sides pointing the finger at each other. And it's just like, damn, we're doing exactly what this system wants us to do. The whole idea is to break down the family. I don't think it should be a secret. It's kind of obvious now. We've seen statistics in the United States in particular, that says you go back, 60, 70 years, and you say most 75% of Black children were being raised in two-parent households, where now today is probably about 20%. So if the objective was the destruction of the family, it has definitely worked on the Black family. And from the stats that I've seen, is working on the society as a whole, because we're seeing decreasing numbers of two parents in households across the board in every, group. Do we look at that as something positive? So anyway, this video was posted by this group right here, the Conceito Preto IG page. I like some of the things that they're talking about. I'm gonna probably have to do some more reactions to some of their videos. They're all about the construction of a strong Black family. Okay. This is the young lady's page who did the video. She calls herself Let. I don't know if it's Let or Lechi Hotep. There was something else on here that I saw. Let me see. She calls, okay, so right here, you see Nacionalista Preta, which means Black nationalist. So this is a young lady whose video that I just watched and reviewed. So I'm definitely want to pay attention to more of the material that she has. And the reason why this is so important is, as I've said, without spending too much time on this, we know some of the rhetoric that's come out of particularly leftist movements. Some of the things that are coming out of feminist circles, which says, okay, let me see, like this one here. Okay, so we see some of the same slogans going on in Brazil. It says, elas não precisam de homens, like they don't need men. I don't know if that's they're reviewing an American video or, well, according to these names, Karina, Lesliana, Eduza, looks like these are probably Brazilian women. I'm definitely have to take a look at the video that they put out. This is that's the same video there. They don't need men. Let me see. Okay, women don't need a man to be complete because they were already born complete. Let me see here. the woman doesn't need a man to resolve her problem. She needs a man that doesn't create more problems. Okay. I mean, I can actually agree with that. But what I'm saying is the rhetoric is all over online. So I'm showing this in Portuguese because these are some of the same slogans that you're getting in Brazil. When the woman says that she doesn't need a man for nothing, where is she? Wait, where is she wrong in saying this? Okay. So no woman needs a man to be happy. A woman without a, what is it? A woman without a man is like a fish without a bicycle. Okay. The woman doesn't need a man for nothing. So a lot of this discussion is going on in Brazil as well. I want to definitely check out some of these videos because I'm just noticing this now as I'm going through and reviewing. I just wanted to show that some of the same slogans exist in Brazil, right? Here you say the woman does not need a man, and on it goes. You don't need a woman. Okay, so we got some of the dynamics of the gender war going on in Brazil as well. A man to love a woman doesn't need to know her totally. Okay, I'm gonna have to look into that. I'm not sure what that's supposed to mean. Then I was still in Sao Paulo when I started seeing calls of what they were calling masculinidade tóxica. Well, I think you can figure that out. That means toxic masculinity. And a lot of people are saying that, wow, some of the characteristics that you consider to be toxic is, in reality, a lot of people have just argued like, no, it's nothing toxic about it. It's just being a man. Now, when men stop being so-called toxic and they delve more into a feminine side, then women are not going to like that man either. So you got the toxic here, and then, okay, is this the type of man that you want? The one who's in his woman's lap? She's actually holding him up. So the people are saying like, okay, that's not what you want either. But by you labeling masculinity as being toxic, this is the type of man that you're going to end up creating. So this is the reason why I wanted to talk about this video today. There's a number of articles I have at the blackbraziltoday.com blog that just talks about, the feminist movement in Brazil. I'm not speaking specifically on the movement itself, but when I first started looking into the whole race issue in the movement in Brazil for the Black population, as I said, I saw that a lot of this was coming out of like feminist Black women. And at the time, I was like, wow, Black women are leading the movement. It just looks like they're leading the movement in Brazil. But years later, I started looking at some of the behind the scenes and some of the origins going back there, and I started noticing some issues. And talking to Black men who were not affiliated with, say, the mainstream movimento negro in Brazil, they started pointing out some of the issues that were coming out of the left that pushed them away from, the traditional Black movement in Brazil, as well as pointing out what's going on with feminists. And I said, oh, wow. So having knowledge of what's happened in the United States, it made me start questioning like, wow, are Black Brazilians being splintered as well? Because leftist movements have put these ducks in a row that's going to, create a conflict within the let's say the Black community. I'm seeing signs of this already. So I'm going to keep my eye on this for the next X amount of years, because I'm curious to see what's going to happen in Brazil. There's always been a plan and focus that's designed to destroy the Black population, whether it's through, mixing of races, or whether, it's police violence in the streets that tends to, how can we say, just take away the lives of lots of particularly Black men in Brazil. So I'm looking at all of this that's going on, and I have to ask the question, what is going on here? Some people are completely behind the feminist movement. There's others who are looking beyond after having participated in the feminist movement and seeing something that's not quite right. This woman here says, the Black man is not my enemy. White feminism does not contemplate and not meet the demands of Mulheres negras or Black women. Okay, so this is an ongoing discussion. I wasn't trying to go all into this in just one video. I really just wanted to present the video that I was reacting to, because this is a woman who seems to see that there's something fishy going on in terms of what's going on with Black men and Black women. And we've all been influenced by Western values, and some of those values are being destroyed. And then some of the movements that we seem to connect to may be one of the reasons for our downfall. So this is why I just wanted to talk about what this young lady had to talk about today. I don't know. What is your view? How do you see this? What side of the political coin do you sit on? Are you a person who you consider yourselves to be a pure leftist? Are you more conservative? Are you somewhere in the middle? Because I've had to say in the last, let's say 10 to 15 years, I've had to move my views more to the center because I'm seeing things that's coming out of the left that I don't necessarily like. That's not to say then I'm fully conservative, but I am seeing that neither side is 100%, let's say, in support of the people. I don't know. I'm still discovering things myself, still working this out. So I'll be curious to know what you all thought. First, tell me about where you're coming from these days. How do you lean politically? What did you think about today's video and what this young lady had to say? Let's have a conversation. Before you leave, please take a minute to just like this video, share this video, consider subscribing to the channel and clicking on that notification bell. With that said, I'm going to end this video here and request that you all come back. Check out the next video that I post here at Black Brazil Today.